Hello and welcome to another Out of Spec Reviews video. You join me in Michigan with the new Chevy Silverado. This is the work truck trim. Now this is the first video in many to come on the Silverado EV, and what you're about to see in this video is my very first driving impressions behind the wheel. Keep in mind that this video is, I showed up to Michigan, I jumped in the truck and we figure everything out together, share my very first few miles in the vehicle. And there's a few things that I actually left out in the video that I want to make you aware of before you watch it. Of course, it's our typical first drive. I think you'll really enjoy it. It's been really fun to play around with this truck, but a couple things that are really interesting to know about the Silverado EV before you watch this video. The first is the version we're driving is what's called the work truck, and specifically the 4WT. The 4WT means it has a 450 mile EPA range. That's 100 plus miles more than the Rivian R1T and more than 100 miles more than the Lightning, even with the big battery. So just massive range here. And we're going to talk about battery capacity in the video, and it's massive as well. As you can imagine, GM won't confirm it, but I pretty much figured it out in this video, so stay tuned. The next thing is that this is a dedicated electric vehicle architecture from the ground up. So unlike the Lightning, which takes a fairly normal F-150 body and slaps a battery in it, the actual battery pack in this vehicle is an integral structural component of the vehicle. So it's not body on frame, it's not unibody, it's sort of a mix. And the battery and the whole truck is sort of combined together as one, which is very cool. Very similar to Hummer EV. A lot of things here on the Ultium platform will share between the Hummer EV and this, but they are technically different chassis on the vehicles. Other than that, this is just for fleet usage. The one we're driving today, you need a fleet number with GM, and it's quite expensive, which we'll talk about as well. But for fleets, the total cost of ownership is what's really important. Now, very soon, we'll be talking in an upcoming video about the RST over here, which is the consumer one, as well as an upcoming Trail Boss version, which they'll be launching, and other trims to come. But this is a fully dedicated electric vehicle platform, the Silverado EV. I cannot wait to share this video with you. So let's jump into it and give it a drive for the very first time. We'll start with a tour of the vehicle. We'll then walk through the pricing and specs and numbers. We'll also take it to a DC fast charger. And yes, of course, you'll get my driving impressions of the vehicle. So let's go. I want to thank Chesapeake Climate Action Network Action Fund for sponsoring today's video. Guys, remember last year we did a thing with these guys, CCAN, and it was incredible. And literally one of you won a Rivian R1T. All you did was go to evraffle.org, bought a ticket, and you literally won a truck. And I thought that was the coolest thing. So we're like, let's do it again. And this time the prizes are getting bigger and better. So not only can you, of course, enter to win a Rivian R1T or R1S now, plus $10,000 worth of charging. I mean, you could go a long ways with that. You can also choose to get a Lucid Air Grand Touring, $138,000 value right there, or a Tesla Model X Plaid. You can take your pick when you win the raffle. There's only 5,500 tickets. They're a couple $100 a piece. Again, the odds are incredible for this. I was so thrilled that one of our viewers won a truck last time. I can't wait to see which one of you gets to win one of these incredible vehicles this time. Again, head to evraffle.org, and a huge thanks to Chesapeake Climate Action Network Action Fund for sponsoring today's video. Starting right off, can we start with styling? Is that kind of weird in a driving video? I mean, I've shown you Silverado work truck before on this channel. If you watched our tour of ACT, it was on display. I think this thing looks the business. It looks so cool. And actually, tomorrow's video, or maybe in a couple days time, I've also filmed a full tour of the RST trim. We're not able to drive the RST yet, but that's sort of the high-end, sporty, 24-inch wheel trim. That thing looks insane. So keep an eye out for that video. It'll have a lot of differences to the work truck. And man, there's so much going on here. It's just insane. It's just me here in Michigan today, so I'm just going to take you on a quick tour, walk you around the whole vehicle. We'll explore it together for the first time. Genuinely, you'll get my very first driving impressions of the vehicle, the first few inches in it, and I'm already noticing a few interesting things right off the bat. First of all of the work trucks Chevrolet has brought to this event have been white. So I'm not sure if they're only offering it in white, but it wouldn't be surprising to me because a lot of work trucks are white as is, and also Hummer EV Edition 1 launched only in the white color. So I'm not sure of the specs, the configurator's not online yet in terms of option packages, but I wouldn't be surprised if white is the only color early on. It's also an interesting decision that they're starting with the work truck version first. They're supporting their fleet customers with this before the general public. And I actually think that's a good idea. The reason is, from a testing standpoint, from a data capturing standpoint, from a pricing standpoint, the fleets are the ones who need the electric vehicles the most. It's where most of the impact can be had when we're talking about the benefits of an electric vehicle, especially to the environment and all of these things. Fleets use the vehicles heavily, and it's going to be great for GM to get them in fleets' hands, get the data going, figure out how they're using them, and then of course the consumer ones are coming in not much time after this. I don't have exact launch timing or anything like that, but my guess is 2024, something maybe even later this year, maybe fall 2023. I'm not sure when the consumer ones will be coming, but sorry, one of the guys from GM just wanted to stop and say hey. So anyway, we're back. Let's start talking about specs, pricing, everything we do know about this. Well, the big thing GM is pushing with this, that Chevrolet is pushing with this, is 450 miles of EPA rated certified range. They ran the 2-cycle, pretty insane that they got this thing with that much range. And so it has by far much more driving distance on a single charge than F-150 Lightning, Rivian R1T, Hummer EV, or really almost any electric car on the market today. 450 miles of range is crazy, and that is specifically in the 4WT trim. That means you get 450 miles of range. There will be a 3WT trim that I understand will look identical to this, but will have a 350 mile range or so with some modules removed out of the battery pack. But to launch with that huge driving range is really interesting. So no question, this will be the top range spec of any Silverado on sale. It has the least amount of content on the inside, which means the weight is lighter. It doesn't have the big glass roof, doesn't have the big wheels for aero. And so that's why the work truck actually is the long range model here. So that is really kind of fascinating and just massive range. We really need to appreciate that. What we also need to discuss is how are they getting their range. Talking to some GM engineers who have been driving the truck, they've been saying they've been getting, I don't know, 2.4 miles per kilowatt hour on some different versions is what they told me, and that is very efficient compared with Lightning and compared with my Rivian. Now, of course, we need to run them all side by side, same conditions, same day to truly see which is more efficient. But for example, if I'm getting over 2.1 miles per kilowatt hour in my Rivian, like I'm working really hard, I'm in conserve mode, I'm really stretching it. And for the engineers to say, even with the bigger wheels on their test truck, they're seeing 2.3, 2.4, that's amazing efficiency. And also they use dual permanent magnet motors here, no clutch disconnect. So very similar Ultium powertrain architecture to what we've seen with Hummer and of course Lyriq and other things. They all use pretty much the same motor type, just size up the architectures down, up and down, I should say. And so dual motor in this particular one, I saw about 400 kilowatt output. You'll join me on the first drive. I'm shooting this a little bit out of order. So huge power. Really a very cool vehicle, but the one thing that they won't tell us is the battery size. GM, just like they did with Hummer, they're not confirming the gross and usable capacity of the battery pack. And honestly, I think that's a little bit of a shame because we all want to know the battery pack capacity. Just tell us. And so I am going to make some predictions here, and I might be wrong, and these are just my guesses. But this vehicle has a peak DC fast charging rate of 350 kilowatts. That's pretty much the standard right now for maximum charging power in the US. It's pretty much what EA will be able to provide, et cetera, et cetera. And so for the 350 kilowatt charging version of the Hummer EV, you need to have the 212 kilowatt hour usable battery pack. And any smaller version of that battery pack charges slower. For example, the Hummer EV SUV only has a 300 kilowatt max charging rate, and that's because they had to remove some capacity out of the battery. So with the Silverado 4WT, I'm guessing it is the same or similar battery to what's in the Hummer. Now, some of the engineers, they're like, they just won't tell me. They're like, we cannot tell you, Kyle, what's the battery. But they're telling me they use the latest and greatest Ultium chemistry, I believe NCM in this particular one. And so that is what they're going for. So basically, I'm unsure of the capacity of the battery pack of this moment, but my guess is 212 kilowatt hour usable, maybe 240 gross, 235 gross, just guessing. Since we're on the topic of charging, let's go through the rest of this because that's why you guys come to me for nerd stuff. Awesome to see 19.2 kilowatt, 80 amp charging through the J1772 port. On the DC side, of course, it's going to support up to 350 kilowatts in this particular one. And the battery pack, just like Hummer EV, just like we've demonstrated, there's two different stacks. Typically, the truck's around 350 volt nominal. They basically go ka-chunk with a contactor, put the bottom and the top pack into series, essentially doubling the voltage. And that's how you can get that very high charging power. The reason GM does this is because most of the sub-level components of the truck are built around a 400 volt system architecture. And so rather than making the big batteries, they have to put different ECUs in the truck, different power modules, different XYZ, a bunch of different stuff. Rather than doing that, they said, well, we really only just want to get the charging performance. That's the main benefit of high voltage. So what they do is when you plug this into a DC fast charger, it actually physically reconfigures the battery pack architecture, basically takes all the 400 volt systems offline, the motors, I don't know, bunch of stuff. And then it allows it to charge at essentially a higher voltage, which means you can have, still less current, less heat loss, and higher charging power. So really a smart design. The only ones in the industry we've seen doing this, and it's been fascinating to charge Hummer EV and watch some of the intricacies when this happens. For example, I'm gonna go full nerd spec for a second. In the Hummer EV, the air conditioning, and I believe the 12 volt DC to DC, also just feeds off of one leg of the battery pack, which means when you're actually DC fast charging on a long session, both the top and bottom can slightly get out of balance as the AC pulls just on one side of the battery. And so they actually have to slow charging power down, reconfigure which side the AC is pulling on. It's really complicated stuff so that the battery can be balanced throughout the charging session. It's been fascinating to watch them tune the Hummer EV with software updates. That car had, of course, famously some software bugs in it. GM and Chevy tell me that those are all fixed for this. They learned from that platform. They've gone hardcore into making sure this thing's going to be reliable, and really time will tell. But I am so excited about this truck because the numbers that I just told you are insane, and so much insanely higher than its competition. And at the end of this video, I'm going to give you my comparison of Silverado versus Lightning versus Rivian, as I have spent significant time with the other two trucks. Again, 30,000 miles, probably 40,000 miles in Rivians I've driven combined, and maybe 10,000 miles in Lightning. I'm very familiar with those trucks, so stay tuned for that. The one thing before we go inside is I want to tell you the price. The price is expensive, but again, this is the long range big battery version. It's $77,990. So under 80K, still gets the full tax credit, will qualify for other credits that will come into, maybe fleet electrification, and the smaller battery ones will be cheaper. I believe GM is still sticking with the guidance that the small battery version will start somewhere in that $40,000 range. But if you want the big battery, dual motor, all the stuff this truck has, this one, as it sits, is $77,990. Steel suspension, by the way. Before we drive it, I just want to touch on this really quick. There will be versions of the Silverado that will have air suspension and rear steer. This truck has neithers, but it is fully independent front and rear suspension. It is a fixed coil. It is a fixed damper. It has fixed sway bars. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how the tuning works, because to balance payload, which you have 1,400 pounds of payload available, even with the big battery, which is quite a bit for having this much battery capacity. And again, a GVWR of 9,999 pounds. It needs to be under 10,000 to be considered a light duty truck, which this is. That's quite a bit of payload. So I'm surprised they were actually able to get that much payload in this truck. The original guidance was 1,200. They just released 1,400 pounds today. Very nice interior. I'll take you on a full tour of this here in just a moment. But I just want to give you a quick overview of the bed, the front trunk, all of this stuff. I'm going to sit in the back seat. We'll of course try this out. Let's open up the tailgate, see if it's unlocked or not. It is currently not. Let's see if I can grab the key, which is right here. Again, work truck doesn't have the tailgate unlock switch like the RST does. You'll have to watch for tomorrow's video. It is a dampened tailgate, but it is not power up. I actually don't believe there's power up on any version. GM tells me that this roll-up tonneau cover is standard equipment on this work truck version, so that's pretty cool. So basically you just undo the Velcro and just roll it all the way up, and that looks nice. I think it's great to have that. Now, again, 2024 model year, my impression is they're contenting the trucks quite heavily, and then in 2025 they may start to remove some of the stuff depending on, I guess, customer usage. One of those topics is the power system here. So it has 240 volt power outlet right there, which you can do 7.2 kilowatts out. Same port as F-150 Lightning. I believe it's a NEMA 1030R or 1430R. I forget exactly, but GM says that'll work great. They say it'll work great. I don't know what I was actually going to say, but then you have 2 banks of NEMA 520 outlets, and that is standard on the 2024 Silverado. That's fascinating. More fascinating than that is you'll actually get a V to L adapter dongle that plugs into the J1772 port here, and presumably the Tesla NACS connector as GM switches to it, which we'll talk about. I absolutely love the ability to use this giant, again, my prediction, around 200 kilowatt hour battery pack to get that much, to get all the energy out of it. Of course, when you're using the power system, I keep wanting to call it Pro Power, that's Ford's name. When you're using the power system in this, I forget the exact name. Let's look in the system and find whatever GM calls it, because everyone's got their own fancy name for this stuff. We'll go here to this thing. Nope, we'll go here to vehicle power base. Excuse me. When you're using power base, you have to shut the vehicle off, which you do by going, let's think about this. How do you shut the vehicle off? There's no start stop button in here. Yeah, that's right. You go to this button, vehicle off. There we go, vehicle's off. Now I got to go back to power base, boom, and we're running 7.2 kilowatt limit. Very cool. You can set your minimum state of charge on it. You can say, hey, don't go below 0%, 5%, 5% increments all the way up to 100 basically, which is very neat. Let's hit the front trunk release. And so, yeah, you can do 7.2 kilowatts out of there. I'm not sure they've fully figured out how to do vehicle to load, vehicle to vehicle. There will be a vehicle to home situation on the consumer versions of Silverado, which I'm sure Tom Malogny will cover. He did that with his F-150 Lightning. Shout out to Tom for going through all of that so we can learn how that system works. Opening up the front trunk, it is not a power front trunk, actually, unlike F-150 Lightning. And for $77,900, give us a power front trunk. The higher trim versions have it. Just throw it in here. But I think all the money went to the battery pack. Anyway, you have your 12 volt battery under here. You have your fireman cut loop right here. Fairly sizable front trunk, nowhere near as big as F-150 Lightning. Probably similar usable capacity to Rivian, maybe slightly less. But the nice thing in comparison to the Rivian and similar to Lightning is you have a very low loading height. This bit of the front grille lifts up with the hood, which is really convenient, unlike the Rivian where you have to get stuff up and over the hump. So really loving the execution here. Now to close the front trunk, are there little handles we can grab in here? Does not appear to be. So I think the way to do it would be to actually hold on to this, pull it down, and they tell me it has soft close. And I'm not seeing the soft close happen. So maybe we got to push harder. No, there we go. A little bit weak on the soft close. So I think it might be a slam. So before we drive it, I'll slam the hood shut. Or the soft close may not be working. I'm not 100% sure. LED lights as standard on this model, especially running lights right here. So this is your daytime running light, and then this is your actual main beam down below. That looks really nice. Love to see that. Let's try out the back seat, shall we? I'm going to jump inside, flip the camera view. Let's try this thing out. In the back seat of the Silverado now, and whoa, so much room, so much headroom, so much shoulder room, so much leg room. Look at this. I can like pretty much lounge straight out here. This is insane, and that's behind my seating position. This may as well be rebranded to the new S-Class. There is so much room in this vehicle. Truly unbelievable amounts. That is insane how huge this is, especially when I compare it to my Rivian, which feels extremely cramped. This is next level. Now, Lightning, probably not even quite as big as this, but Lightning has a plenty big cab. So, yeah, again, that comparison coming at the end of the video. So there's the back seat for you. You got a ton of storage down here for cup holders, umbrella slots, all good. No complaints about this. Spartan, nothing really, 2 USB-C ports, and there are air vents, but that's about it. There you can see the RST on the move, blacked out, 24-inch wheels, looking crazy. That will be tomorrow's video, or at least in 2 days, so keep an eye out for that. We're just here in Michigan for the little launch event for the Silverado, and they brought along a little eye candy RST for us to play, or at least take a look at, and I convinced them to let me make a video with it. It is looking great. Okay, so inside the cab now, manual seats on this one. Let me just slide back slightly. Love manual seats personally, that's wonderful. You have your 2 main instrument clusters. I want to say 11-inch here, 17-inch in the RST. You have your main display in front of you as well, which fully integrates Google. This whole system is basically Google software, which works fairly well. A couple little complaints just about the controls first, and then some really nice things. I don't like that there's no physical light control switch anywhere. You have your physical wiper switches here, but to actually get to the lights of the vehicle, you have to go here to this menu, and then you can choose. It's not the end of the world. It's just not maybe as work trucky as I would expect, where you just have a physical button that you could, boom, hit lights on or off. This is, Tesla does this. A few other car companies do everything through the screen here. NIO is another one that comes to mind, and it works. It's just, a lot of people will be driving this truck. It needs to be intuitive. I'm not convinced that's intuitive. Also, the way to shut the truck off here or adjust your one pedal driving on and off, which you can choose, which we'll talk about when we drive the vehicle right there. In terms of your instrument display, I can cycle through here. Full color display as standard. Few different screens to choose from. It will always tell you your power output in kilowatts, which I love, and the state of charge on the left. You can see it's predicting 320 miles, and we're below 70% state of charge. That's that 450-mile range. And what's funny about that is actually based off of driving history. And when I got in this truck, and again, journalists have been driving this truck, when I put it to 100%, it showed well over 450 miles. Again, they don't recommend charging above 80% daily, especially if you're in the mountains, because this truck is so heavy, it really wants to use the regen to help decelerate rather than relying just on the friction brakes. And if you charge too high, you can't put energy in the battery pack. But I just took it out for a quick rip, and I was really hard on it. And even then, it's showing 452 miles predicted at 100%. So when they say 450 miles, I think we'll see customers getting real world, if they're driving in city environments, well over 500 miles would be my guess. We'll have to do a little test on that. But just the amount of distance you can go in this is crazy. And they tell me that that is their #1 customer concern, is range. Now, for you guys watching this channel and me, it's all about charging performance intermixed with range. It's not just range, but 350 kilowatt charging with that much range, oh my God, I'm not really sure much can top that. Is this going to be a faster road tripper than Lucid? Time will tell, time will tell. We have a few different buttons down here. You have your towing mode on and off. Actually, interestingly, as I kick it on, you can watch the range drop right here. How about that? Real-time recalculation based off of towing. And we will do some towing tests with this truck. I want to tow against the Rivian, against the Lightning with this vehicle, and really show. Right now, I think the Lightning probably has the most range while towing. The Rivian, I think, tows the best with that crazy suspension. It can also tow 1,000 pounds more than this truck. This truck is 10,000 pound maximum towing capacity, but they will have a version with higher capacity. I'm not convinced they'll see that 20,000 pound towing capacity on a production Silverado like they originally said, but again, time will tell. That's a lot of weight. I think we'll probably see 12 to 15 would be my guess, but I'm not sure. That's just me spitballing. Steering wheel quality, certainly not the highest grade leather, a little bit pebbled here, but still not bad. Feels nice in the hand, good thickness. It's a really nice wheel. Again, I'm going to dry steer it just because test truck, but you can see one turn and So almost 3 turns lock to lock, something like that. Now we're back to the center position. We'll just go a little bit over to keep the wheels straight. The wiper stock here, you just twist this up and the wipers will start going. That makes sense. You can push in for a single wipe or push and hold for a wash. The actual process of getting in the truck, I'll talk about when we drive it, but I just want to show you the shifter. You pull it back and into drive. So you have a pull back, basically a park lock release for neutral and up. I think this works great. I love the stock column shifter like this. You know, you're no longer doing the old GM stuff, the old Chevy Silverado ka-chunk. Now you just pull it back and throw it in drive like this. But this works great. I'm very pleased with it. And I believe there's a physical parking pawl in the actual gear train of the vehicle, which some automakers go with, some don't. But there is also an electronic parking brake that can act as a supplemental stopping force. So what else do we have to show you in here? Software-wise, software is extremely snappy. There's a lot we can do here. It has Google Maps built in. So let's actually end this destination. Let's see how good the route planning is, because that's going to be very important, as this Silverado EV might be the first electric vehicle that many people try out. So let's put in Fort Collins. Look at that, right up there, super fast. How long will it take for it to calculate this out? Whoa. So it got the route there, but we want to add charging stops. And there we go. Boom, just like that, all of our charging stops. Are you kidding me? That's awesome. And it does a great job of route planning, getting us there at 13%. That's very reasonable to take advantage of the charging curve. There we go. And we can just hit start. Now there's also on-route battery preconditioning, I believe, with this system, but worst case, if not, we can go over here to, I don't remember. Oh, that's right. You click this one and then you go to settings within the charge menu, boom. And then you go to fast charge prep and you hit start. And it says a different message than what the Hummer says. It says, just like an athlete, your battery needs a warm-up to perform its best. In the same way, this feature gives your vehicle a head start for fast charging, and it preconditions the battery on the way to a charging station, getting it at the perfect temperature so you can get the maximum charging power. Yes, you're going to burn some extra juice on the way there, but it's well worth it for the fast charging to come. So that is a great feature. Since we're not going to fast charge right away, we won't need that going. Well, actually, I might swing by a fast charger. Let's put it back on. Okay, very good. In terms of standard equipment, again, this is a fairly base truck. You have a full 360-degree cam. You can zoom in on different angles. You can conduct your own movie with this thing. Super awesome to see all of that. Love how snappy the software is. The hotspot built in. Loving the route planning. It's like GM got it all right here. I'm really not seeing anything to complain about with this truck, which is hard for me because I always complain about stuff. I guess maybe the price for the big battery, $77, but then you're getting a 200 kilowatt hour battery pack. Like, just buy the smaller one if you want a cheaper truck. Like, holy smokes, this is next level. Next level pickup truck right here, totally setting the bar. Well, let's jump in. Let's go for our first drive. Really looking forward to getting this thing out on the road. We'll again drive it. You'll get my first impressions. I'll then drive it around a little bit. We'll then talk about, my impressions after spending a couple hours driving it. And then right at the end of the video, I'll compare it to F-150 Lightning and Rivian R1T and, share my opinions on which one you should go for. Welcome to the inside of the Chevy Silverado 4WT. That's the 450 mile range version. I think the 3WT will be the 350 mile range version. I personally don't like when automakers talk in terms of range because that's in the EPA cycle, and I'd much prefer them to say battery capacity. I understand from a branding perspective, 450 miles of range is massive, but I'd just like to know battery kilowatt hours. And so my guess is this is the same or similar size battery to what's in the Hummer EV. The only real reason I can say that is huge range, of course. Also, I think the 350 kilowatt charging peak gives it away, because even the Hummer short wheelbase only charges at 300 kilowatt peak. The first edition, you know, with the biggest 220 kilowatt hour, 212 kilowatt hour usable battery pack, whatever's in there, that's the only one that gets 350 kilowatts, and this has 350 kilowatts. So that's why I would think, okay, maybe same battery as Hummer, just going off of charge speed, because when you start removing modules, you have to reduce your peak charging power. But it'll still do the 400 to 800 volt switch thing when charging, and maybe we'll find a charging station on our drive. That could be kind of interesting. We're at quite high state of charge. But in this clip, we're literally going to drive it for the first time. I'm sitting where I just got in the truck. I haven't moved it at all, so you'll get my true raw impressions. This vehicle is a, again, 4WT, starting price of $77,990, so very expensive, but it does qualify for tax credits and other fleet-related credits, of course, so that's always good to see. 691 miles on this particular one. There's really not many driving settings, but I am just going to go in here to controls. I'm going to hit see more controls, and once I'm in here, I can go to drive and park settings, and in this menu I can go ESC on and traction control on. I can go ESC off and traction control off, which is for the big skids. So that's your yaw control as well as your wheel spin control. And then I can just go traction control off, like if you're stuck in snow or sand and you just need some more wheel spin. ESC is like for full drifting stuff. Now this is a work truck review, not really needed, and that might be something that Fleet Manager is able to actually reduce the functionality of. I don't know that to be true, but it might be a good idea. Then there's also one pedal driving settings, and that's the big thing I wanted to get to in here. And so you have off, on, and high regen. And so off would be everything's blended on the brake pedal. On for regen would be you get a little bit of one pedal experience. I would imagine we'll try it out. And high would be I imagine full one pedal driving with massive deceleration. Interestingly, for the first time in a GM product, we don't have, that I've noticed, a regen paddle on the steering wheel. It might come in other versions of the Silverado, but it's not in this one. And also the shifter doesn't have an L. It's just park, reverse, neutral, drive. And GM's, like from the Bolt days and maybe even earlier with Volt, it's been a while since I've been in a Volt. You could go D and then L, and L would increase off throttle decel. Here we have our one pedal driving settings. So let me just walk you through what happens when you get in the truck and we'll drive. This is really the only driving settings that we have, so that's what we're going to focus on today. But the first thing you do is when you get in the truck, you sit down, you put your foot on the brake, and it's on. It's full Tesla, full Rivian experience. So much better than anything else out there. You don't have a start button. It's just, you're in and boom, you're in drive. Now, interestingly, the shifter doesn't actually move going up and down. You have to do a quick release, basically a park lock, if you will, by pulling it towards you, that's neutral, and then down for drive, or up for reverse. And it has the vibrators and the seat thing, so it tells me that we're close to hitting that bush behind us. And we'll dig into some more of this stuff. So actually getting into it's amazing. Now the work truck doesn't have rear steer. This one's no rear steer. It is a full fixed suspension, so it has steel springs, a fixed damper, you know, metal sway bars. It is fully independent front and rear, which is interesting. But the payload, even with this big battery, is 1,400 pounds, which is quite a bit considering that the GVWR is still under 10,000. So it looks like, you know, our friends from TFL are just arriving back. This guy's leaving. We'll head out as well. We have no real drive route. We're just going to go out for an hour or something like that and explore this thing and have some fun. So we'll let this guy go ahead of us. And while that's happening, I'll just put it back into park. Everything's super responsive on the shifter, as it should be. Really liking this, where you can just get in, put it in drive, and let's go. So creep is happening, and they're going to let us out now. So we have creep on, and I'm just basically, I have one pedal driving off at the moment. So let's head out and go for our first drive in the Silverado. First of all, light steering, very quiet. Whoa, so cool. So there is still even a tiny bit of regen, 7 kilowatt regen. What were we at there? Yeah, 7 to 9 kilowatt regen, even at low speed. With regen off, so that's interesting. So I guess maybe the first thing we'll do is we'll just walk through the regen modes. Why not? That's always an important thing to dig into. Now, not having rear steer, I'm already noticing the length of this thing just pulling out of there. It's like, whoa, super long. Especially when compared to my Rivian, this thing feels like a beast. And that was one thing I really enjoyed with Hummer EV, a similar wider chassis than this, was actually that Hummer EV had the rear steer. It actually made it feel more nimble than my Rivian did, which is a much smaller truck. So just here as an example, coming in, I have to go pretty wide and then crank the wheel. The first thing we need to do, of course, is test the turning radius, because without rear steer, this thing still needs to be able to turn. And whoa, okay, it actually is good. So the front wheels get a lot of angle here. So that's awesome. And it's a pretty slow steering rack, very truck feeling. But yeah, no, it actually has fairly good turning circle. Okay, that is a relief. Okay, so let's test the regen modes here really quick. So one pedal driving off, I lift off the accelerator pedal. We have creep at 3 kilowatts pushing us. We're at about 5 miles an hour, 4 miles an hour. Yeah, so creep's 4 or 5 miles an hour, something like that. If I put one pedal driving on, whoa, instantly slowing down. I lift off the brake and we're stopped here. Nothing's going on. I'm going to depress the accelerator pedal. I heard the brake release. It is an eye booster type situation. Rolling into the accelerator pedal, lifting off now. 50 kilowatt regen at 12 miles an hour. And it perfectly comes to a stop. Unbelievably good tuning there. Let's go to high regen. We'll do the same thing. Get up to 12, 15 miles an hour. Whoa, 67 kilowatt regen. That is aggressive regen. And a lot of EV drivers love aggressive regen. And maybe some new EV drivers want to ease into it. And so you'll have the settings here to do that. That is so cool. So very pleased. Here's a work truck spec with black wheels. That looks pretty good. Maybe the same spec as this, actually. I haven't checked the wheels on this one. So anyway, I'm going to drive it around. Whoa, high regen is a ton of regen. More than the Rivian. Gets to a stop pretty quickly. Look, here's a stop sign. I'm full off, not touching the brakes. And there we go. That's aggressive. I think maybe regen on, but not in high will be best. Okay, let's start talking about how it drives, how it feels. Long, first of all, big, like it. Dual permanent magnet motors. Whoa, some good performance here. Yeah, really liking this regen setting with it just set to on. Should we do a quick launch? 3, 2, 1. Okay. A little bit of fake noise being piped in there. So 340 kilowatt power output seems to ramp more as you build up speed. Certainly quicker than any combustion vehicle that they make in a truck form. So that feels pretty great. Let's go to the right here. Wow, the roll stability around that corner was nice. Everything here feeling, yeah, the biggest thing is just the slow steering, and that you really have to go out and in because it's quite a large vehicle. But other than that, it's feeling very nicely tuned, way more refined than I would say even Hummer felt to me. And everything here is this is good. This is next level. This is next level range, next level capability in an electric truck. I can't wait to see Ford's response to this. I can't wait to see if Rivian decides to get in this game or they'll just stick in the lifestyle space. This is the no joke electric truck. If you need an electric truck to do work, this has all the range. More importantly than range is the charging performance. And very pleased here with everything. So I'm just going to go up on the highway a few exits. We'll go around the off-ramp. We'll test just briefly a little bit of sporting cred. Not that this is what it's made for at all, but always interesting to see what happens when we start pushing it around some off-ramps. And put in a lot of steering, a lot of front tire work. Again, without the rear steer, I can feel that's doing quite a bit. We are going fairly slow right now, of course. But wow, it really... you can tell the tire is pretty stiff. They run 65 PSI in the tires. Here we go, full power. It's a little bit like Hummer. You have to put in a little bit of lock on the steering. Yeah, it's not 1,000 horsepower Hummer EV or Rivian R1T 800 horsepower fast. That's 364 kilowatts at wide open throttle there. But more than enough to have fun with and get out of your own way. I mean, this will embarrass some diesel trucks for sure. And again, it's not meant to be, you know, equivalent to a diesel truck in really any category. Those are hardcore work trucks for towing. But just as an example, I'm just going to slow down to 60 miles an hour here. And we'll just do a 60, yeah, let's do a 55 roll. Here's 55 miles an hour. Ready? 65, 75, 80. Boom. More than enough performance. But you will use all of it because why not? Even at high state of charge, let's just do a quick test really quick. So we're going to see how much regen we can get. We're at about 72% state of charge. 80 miles an hour on the brakes. So that triggered ABS. I was a little bit on the brakes too hard. Let's get back up to speed. And rolling on the regen, 155 kilowatts, even at 70-something%. Amazing. As the battery pack will lose state of charge, you'll get even more. The most I've seen in an Ultium vehicle, again, Hummer EV First Edition or Edition 1, 400 kilowatt regen, 399, just next level. Anyway, I'm going to do some driving around here close to Ann Arbor. I'm going to come back to you with my impressions of the Silverado. We'll drive it a little bit more on the highway, a little bit more in the city. But at least here you got my very first driving impressions of this vehicle. And wow, everything I'm feeling coming back is uber refined. The suspension surprisingly is very comfortable over these bumps. And the performance stability of it is really quite competent. Like, it's not fast and it's not meant to go around corners, but it's not scary. I can just go into a corner and you just put in some lock, and it must look hilarious from the outside just seeing this big Silverado get right on the edge of the tire. And guess what? It feels like almost no roll, but surprisingly, even without that roll, it's very compliant and comfortable. So, you know, if you're a typical, I don't know, construction worker driving to the job and you're just driving this truck over these beat up roads that we're on right now, it's pretty damn good. Huge regen. I put it in high regen. ESP is kicking on a little bit here. Feels great. Power out. Oh, huge rear motor help. Okay, I'm sorry for reviewing this in a performance matter because that's not what it's meant for, but it freaking has the balance of its 50-50 weight distribution, really low center of mass, definitely juicier rear motor than front. It has like the dynamics of a sports car in a truck. So that bodes really well, not for the work truck version, but for the future RST that's going to come out. Wow, that is very impressive, that whole off-ramp. I was able to set the tire right there on the edge. Certainly I was modulating the throttle a little bit, and ESP was grabbing brakes and stuff, but you can turn that off and it would probably just leave roll stability. And I'm just so impressed with the balance of the truck, the competence of the truck. Much more competent than F-150 Lightning. And I'll give you those comparisons in a little bit of this versus Lightning, because it's a night and day, totally two different characters of truck. And I think GM is killing it with this offering right here. Anyway, I'm going to do some driving on the highway. I want to do a little bit of efficiency numbers, stuff like that. And I'll be back with you in the next clip. Well, you now join me after driving the truck around for some time, just daily driving stuff, highway, city, back roads. The only reason I didn't take you on the full drive is I'm just running super low on batteries. And today, it doesn't really matter, but tomorrow we're going to be paired up with other people in the truck, and they let me take this today to have some alone time with the Silverado. I thought this would be a much better time to film the video. So we're actually on our way to the Electrify America charging station. I've set manual preconditioning for the truck right now, so we are warming up or cooling down the battery pack to whatever it needs. It's still in progress, and it'll let you know when it's at the optimal temperature. Again, we're getting to the charging station at very high state of charge, but we have some time, may as well go test it. We love to charge, and these will be on the new EA station, so I don't expect to see 350 kilowatt peak charging or anything like that. Great performance off the line here, you know, 360, 370 kilowatts of power output. Just awesome to see how much power and torque this thing has for only being the dual motor version instead of like a tri-motor. I keep comparing Hummer EV, but that's again the only Ultium vehicle I've driven other than this one. I have not driven Lyric yet, which I've been really dying to. We just haven't had the opportunity, sadly. I've been trying. So let's run over to the Electrify America charging station. And on the way, I just want to tell you a little bit about driving the Silverado around as a vehicle in an urban environment like I'm doing now, and driving over speed bumps and the compromises needed for this truck. It's unbelievably comfortable vehicle to drive, and quiet and competent. Just feels so well engineered and so beefy and so heavy, but also at the same time, for being heavy and beefy, it's controlled. And that is, I think, the big difference between this, I'm already making wrong turns here, between this and the F-150 Lightning, is that the Lightning has a bit of floatiness to it. It's got a little bit of that almost Cadillac vibe, if you will, where the whole front end's always doing this. This is locked in. And there is a sporting edge to it. More, I would say, not really sporting, but I would say at least confidence-inspiring edge, where you're not afraid, again, like I showed you around that on-ramp, to just kind of stuff it into some corners and give it the beans and get some wheel spin, and then get on the brakes as stuff flies around. Like, it's just, everything feels so overbuilt for this truck that it never feels like you're stressing it. So that is cool. And just the ability to have a vehicle this big, this heavy, this powerful, give you a sense that, yeah, it's not that intimidating to drive it. You just kind of get in and go. That's impressive engineering, truly. So on the highway, which is the big question here, the 450-mile range, I think, is achievable at highway speeds, or at least 55 or 60 on a nice day with, of course, other factors, elevation, wind, all this stuff. All the GM folks are kind of telling me like 450 is like low. So the range in this might be truly incredible when we're able to get it in our 70-mile-an-hour test. Maybe we actually do need to run this alongside the Lucid and see which can go farther. I bet the Lucid can go farther. It's so much more efficient, but this has a huge battery in it. So very interesting take from them to say, like, we rated at 450 and that's EPA, but like, you could get that. And that's a lot. That means a lot to the end user. You don't want to say a vehicle can do 450 miles of range and then it not do 450 miles of range under normal, easy driving scenarios. Of course, if you throw a trailer on this thing, if you put it to max payload, you're going to get less range. And a lot of it has to do with driving style. And most of the time, you're not driving from 100 to 0 anyway. You're charging up 50, 60, 70% and then heading to the next charger. And that's the range that really matters. So the 10% challenge in this is going to be hugely important, and I think it's going to be so much faster to travel long distance in this truck than Rivian and Lightning, because it seems to have great thermal capacity. I talked to the engineers. They're like, we put this thing through the ringer. We are not overheating it. We can beat the crap out of it. They were like surprised that my Rivian keeps overheating over and over on me, and my Rivian just lives in the red on a road trip at charging stops. They're like, oh yeah, no, you're not going to have that issue with this. Lightning, unbelievably good thermal management as well, but less than half the charging peak speeds of this truck. And so to me, this is almost a twice as usable truck, because you can actually take it places. And that's where we're going now. We're going to a fast charger just to see how big it is, how it feels to get it into a charging spot, and all of those types of things. So my impressions of the Silverado, work truck aside, this is the new king truck. That's my impression. This thing is got all the power, it's got all the battery, all the range, all the charging performance, all the functionality, the power ports, the 19.2 kilowatt vehicle to vehicle situation, which is truly awesome. And just, it drives so nice. It almost has this luxury vibe to it, because everything is so well engineered that it just is so wonderful to cruise around in this truck. I would totally try and get one with a rear steer if you could, though. That would make or break this thing almost. It's fine without it, but you really got to put in a lot of steering lock. And if they tune the rear steer to be anything like the Hummer, then that's going to be a nimble, really fun truck. It's long, and I'm loving it, truly loving it. So I'll see you over at the charging station, and then I'll give you my comparison thoughts on this versus Lightning and Rivian. We have arrived at Electrify America with 69% state of charge, conveniently, and you can all leave your comments about that. Not planned, but it is funny. So we are using the old school CCS connection here, and already right off the bat I'm annoyed because this is not getting out of the way easy enough to just straight plug in. I almost have to two-hand to stuff this somewhere. I don't know, can I just squeeze it there for it to hold? Because I can't just put the connection in. NACS port can't come soon enough. Let's take a look. There's an e-tron that plugged in at like 6% over here and an iX, very nice. This says members only, credit card reader unavailable. Okay. So again, NACS port, access to the supercharger network, can't come soon enough. Let me get this interface plugged in and I'll get the charge session activated and let's juice it up so the GM guys don't have to go and charge it later since I'm driving it for longer than I should. Damn, look at this charging curve. 70%, still doing 163 kilowatts. This is going to be a charging machine. 162 kilowatts delivered. By the way, you can't ever rely on this number on the right here. I'll go into that in another video, but that really means nothing because the charger communicates its maximum and then the car requests something. You can see it is slightly over what it's requesting, but I can also do another video on maybe why that is with DC metering not being perfect. Anyway, we are juicing, cable cooling's ripping. I wish it would tell us the pack voltage, but I assume it's very similar to Hummer EV. I'll let the energy go into this thing and then we will, I'll share some thoughts while we're charging on the truck. But that is one hell of a charging curve right there. 160 kilowatts at 69%, next level. So I'm just sitting in the Silverado. I think to turn it on, I just hit the brakes. Yes, there we go. It says charge cord connected, AC ripping. Eco climate is on, turn off. Yes, we don't want eco climate. Turn off eco climate. This is a Silverado. Big battery, not eco. All right, let's share some comparison thoughts of this versus Lightning and Rivian. So I've absolutely loved the drive in the Silverado, and it has truly exceeded my expectations. This is an electric truck that hasn't been talked about nearly as much as the F-150 Lightning, which is its main competitor, and certainly not nearly as much as the future Ram Revolution that is also going to be, I think, kind of a real direct competitor to this. Next level, big battery, going all out. The Lightning is a fantastic truck. Don't get me wrong. I love the Lightning and I love its capabilities and I love how Ford really went all in and, you know, they led this space. The F-150 Lightning truly made the light duty, full-size truck, if you will, electric, and that is props to them. But I think sort of GM and Stellantis both looked at that and said, all right, let's dial it up to 12, not just 11. Just take the F-150 thing and go huge. Look at this cool car driving through the parking lot here. That is so neat. It's just some old lady driving her old car. That's awesome. So in terms of specs on paper, this wins. It has the biggest price, at least in work truck form. It has the most battery. It has the most acceleration, at least to me feeling, maybe that's not true. I shouldn't say that, but it has 500 and something horsepower stock and like 600 pound-feet of torque. The range is the big thing. The range and the charging. That's what I care about. Yeah, you can put 1,400 pounds of payload in here and all that stuff. That's wonderful. What I care about is a truck that feels like there's no compromise, because now I feel like, oh, I can actually go far. And when I do show up to a charger, I can replenish the battery consistently and quickly, which is something that you can't say for the Rivian because it has thermal issues and it has a okay charging curve. And you can't say for the Lightning because, yeah, the thermals are amazing in the Lightning and it gives you a repeatable charging session, but it charges less than half the peak speed of this. And so now it's like, holy crap, we have fairly efficient truck on the highway. We have fairly, according to the GM engineers, there's actually no miles per kilowatt hour or any efficiency calculator I can find in the systems in this truck. I looked everywhere. So I was going to do some efficiency testing, but it might be a work truck thing where they just don't show it to you. Or maybe I'm not looking in the right places, but I looked in every menu to find a trip computer and there isn't one. So I don't know what's up with that. Hummer EV has one, but maybe it's a work truck thing. And so, you know, in terms of capabilities, this is a vehicle that no longer feels like you need to have excuses for electric, which for like Rivian and Lightning, I always feel like, you know, it's amazing around town, but towing's kind of, and it's, you know, it doesn't have that much range. This towing is going to have significantly more range than both of those trucks. And it's actually going to be a real usable device. So much so that I had never thought about trading my Rivian in for anything, or even, yeah, I love the way my Rivian drives. It's smaller, it's nimble, it's great. But for what I use it for, which is a lot of towing, I need high charging power and I need big range, and this offers it. So we'll see what the future holds. I think I just love the way the Rivian drives around town. It's so much sportier, so much more nimble than this truck. It's a higher quality experience, of course. But there is something special about the Silverado where it's a full-size truck. You have much more space, and it just feels like it's built to not have to make excuses for electric. And the numbers on paper and the charging performance here, 116 kilowatts, still ripping along quite high state of charge now. I'm just loving this. It is so much more truck than Lightning and Rivian. And well, I think Stellantis's Dodge or their Ram Revolution is going to be on this level. I think there's going to be almost two classes of trucks. And so we'll see if Ford decides to step up the Lightning and put twice the battery pack in there and twice the charging performance and better software integration and things, because I love the Lightning, but this space is advancing so quickly that, man, they really nailed it with this Silverado. Truly nailed it. Truck guys are going to love this. A lot of them, at least, a lot more than I think F-150 drivers liked F-150 Lightning. I think more Silverado owners will like the Silverado EV, just because there's less compromise with a truck like this. The price is the big thing, though. They're expensive, very expensive, but you're getting a lot of battery and a lot of truck. So there you have it. Those are my thoughts on comparing this to the others. Just sitting in the cab here in the base truck, it feels like it has everything you need. Adaptive cruise control is standard, huge cubbies everywhere. It's relatively quiet on the highway. It's very quiet on the highway. This one, being a pre-series truck, had some rattles up over here, though. I have to point that out. It didn't feel totally perfectly put together, but again, it's an early example. It's not a VINed vehicle. So I can't thank GM enough for letting us have an early opportunity. I think it's a whole new level of truck. Truly, I'm not just saying that. I really think this is next level. I'd be really curious to do the comparison testing on F-150 Lightning versus the Ram Revolution. You know, the Lightning is going to win on price, I think, no question, because it has a lot less stuff in it. But when you're up there spending the big money, some people just want it all, and this truck has it all. So I'm so much more enthused with this than when I first got here a few hours ago. Not to say I was against it. I was just like, it'll be like a Lightning. No, this is a whole nother level. So thanks to Chevrolet for having me out to review this for you guys in this video. I'm thrilled. And congratulations on building such one hell of a beefy truck with everything you need. Great charging performance, great range, great all of that stuff. And there we go. I'm noticing the exact same charging performance as Hummer EV. So my guess is, yeah, it's the same battery pack. It does this dip around 80% and then comes up at the end. Yeah, I think it's the same battery. See you in another one soon. Just to show you battery pack capacity, rough gauge, 68 to 79%. Was 27.85 kilowatt hours delivered. Now there are losses. The BMS could have sway, but that's roughly, you know, just about 12% because it technically cut off at 80. So yeah, that 220 kilowatt hour number on the battery pack is looking real promising to me. I think it's the same battery as the Hummer, same behavior that I've seen. I have to issue a correction. There is a trip menu. What you do is you go here to vehicle status, and then you can either go to energy info and it will tell you all of this stuff, or you can go here to energy efficiency. And actually this is 2.1 miles per kilowatt hour, 0 miles. I wonder if that's the rated efficiency of the truck. And that's what they got the numbers off of, which would also lead 450 miles, 2.1 miles per kilowatt hour, 212 kilowatt hour pack. That's kind of all adding up. So there we go. Also crazy efficient. That has the same expected efficiency as Rivian, roughly, with twice the battery. So I imagine that's the EPA rated efficiency or close to it. And then if we go here to trip info, maybe it'll tell me what I did. So 1.8 over the last 606 miles, which I have not done. It's done a lot of idling. So definitely has a trip information. It's all in here. I'm sorry for missing it, but yep, there you go.